Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
Oh my God!
Who do you blame? Well, let's see. If you're on the left, you blame the NRA, guns, gun nuts. If you're on the right, you blame who? Who do you blame? What? You blame the FBI, you blame the school, you blame the manufacturer of psychoactive drugs, which this kid was allegedly on. But don't stop there. You can blame the adoption agency because we don't know where he came from. You can blame the nation he originally came from. I see implications of that now. No one knows what country of origin. What's his country of origin? Now blame the country. You can blame anyone. It's finger pointing. And what good is that going to do us? So I have solutions. And I did this show yesterday. I didn't hold back. I called for limited gun control. I called for an intelligent conversation about guns. Of course, right away, the knee-jerkers started calling me communist, liberal, Berkeleyite. It doesn't matter what you call me. The important thing is somebody in the media has to have the guts to stand up. And of course, we know on the left they're all screaming for that. That you'd expect from the Andy Coopers and the brigades of the left. We understand that. But we have to talk about the issues rather than the blame game. So you're telling me everyone out there needs an AR-15? No. I mean, I've owned a Ruger Mini 14 and AR-15 since 1982. I had to move my AR-15 out of the state of California because they're illegal with a pistol grip. So I moved it to a property in Florida where it's legal. But I don't need it. I did target shooting with it. It's a fabulous weapon, but it's made for a military situation. It's not made for hunting varmints. It's not made for hunting varmint and deer. You do not need an assault weapon to kill a deer. Now, one of the best things I heard today, and we haven't talked about it yet, was from Bill Nelson, Democrat, liberal, Florida, who said he's a hunter. He's been a hunter all his life, still hunts with his son. And he said, I do not need an AR-15 to hunt. Now, why do you disagree with that? That's one side of it. Then there's the other side, the mental hospital thing. Now, the mental hospitals were closed back in the 60s. I have the entire story on this. And we're going to talk about reopening the mental hospitals. This kid should have been in a mental hospital. He was a nut. And we're going to talk about the institutionalization and the history of it. There were acts that were passed that did this. 1967, Ronald Reagan signs the Lanterman-Petrus-Short Act, which ended the practice of institutionalizing patients against their will or for indefinite amounts of time. This law is regarded by some as a patient's Bill of Rights. Now, the law was actually written during Jerry Brown's father's tenure as governor. Reagan had to sign it. But the fact of the matter is, the ACLU is the real problem here. I have a little report here on the ACLU's position on reporting violent posts, for example, on social media. Here was a kid who was saying he was going to do it more or less. And the ACLU has said, no, you can't monitor that. So you want to blame them? Blame the ACLU. I do. I would also blame the entire civil libertarian community for being too lenient with regard to threats of this nature and the police not being able to act. And while you're at it, why don't you go a little more deeply into that side of it? Who do you blame now? So who do you blame now? How did the release of mental patients begin? The ACLU, which has a position paper on this from September 29th, 2016, which I, Michael Savage, yours truly, researcher-in-chief, have in my hand. And they said social media combines the pen, the camera, and the megaphone in a way that lifts individual voices but is proving irresistible to security agencies. So the ACLU came out saying the security agency should have no right to monitor social media. The ACLU, as you well know, is run by mentally ill people with law degrees. I'll stand by that. 99% of the lawyers in the civil liberties groups are medicated psychotics. And they said we need more information about those agencies' efforts to monitor social media networks, which is why in May, we, the ACLU, filed a Freedom of Information Act request with 5 such agencies. Information that should facilitate a public conversation about setting strict limits on such monitoring and incorporating accountability mechanisms for violating those limits. So as you well know, the civil liberties community has a lot of blame in this as well. Because this kid was signaling he was going to do it. He should have been arrested and put into a holding facility, a nut house. The nut houses have to be reopened. We cannot allow the streets to become the outpatient wards for America, nor the schools for that matter. The schools are set up to teach, not to treat mentally ill students. And so there's a lot of blame to go around. And I ask you again, we're going to talk today about reopening the mental hospitals. We're going to talk about a history of deinstitutionalization and who did it, how it happened. We're going to talk about the civil liberties community and how they have to be reined in because they are behind almost every problem in this country. We are going to talk about guns, and more guns. Do we have the soundbite of Senator Bill Nelson of Florida? Because he had the guts to at least say something. It's clip 6 on the Savage Nation. Tell me what you think.
I have hunted all my life. I have had guns all my life. I still hunt with my son. But an AR-15 is not for hunting. It's for killing. But
Amen.
Despite these horrific events that are occurring over and over, these tragedies have led so many of us to come right here to this floor and to beg our colleagues to take common sense actions that we all know will help protect our children and our fellow citizens from these kind of tragedies. And we get nowhere. So when is enough going to be enough?
Senator Nelson, now is enough. Now is enough. Now, yesterday when I brought this topic up on this radio program, a caller very wisely said, yes, you can still own an AR-15 or a Ruger Mini 14 if you want to still buy those kind of guns, a great weapon, by the way. But they should not have removable clips in them. They should be fixed clips with a maximum amount of bullets, such as 5 bullets. That's enough for anybody on the planet. Now, I know the right-wing fears a government takeover and they're going to hold off an army. That is the most stupid thing I've ever heard in my life. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You do not need a military assault weapon in your house for home defense. And I'll cover it again if you missed it yesterday. Every policeman listening to this show knows that I am right. Every law enforcement agency in this country knows that I am right. An assault weapon like an AR-15, and it is an assault weapon, was not designed for home defense. It was designed for the battlefield. It was not designed for hunting deer. It was designed for killing soldiers. What you need for home defense is a handgun and a shotgun. They're two of the best weapons ever designed for a home invasion. Nothing is better. Moreover, as I will point out to those of you who haven't thought this through, police will tell you this, if you were to unleash a barrage of fire in your home against an intruder with an assault weapon, such as that used in Florida yesterday, the rounds will go through the wall and probably kill someone in your own family. Do you understand how dangerous these guns are for home defense? Moreover, in the middle of a situation at night, you can't even see who's in your room. And so, my friends, let's think this through and let's stop standing on our side of the aisle and say, well, no, we can't let the government touch our guns because that's the beginning of the slippery slope. I've heard it all of my life. And I'm Michael Savage. I'm a conservative. I've been a conservative talk show host ever since I began. I really call myself an independent conservative. I try to call him as I see him, as I've used that phrase for years, even though it's been stolen by people who know nothing but stealing and copying and imitating. I call him as I see him, as I have since 1994. This one requires guts. It's so easy to get up here as someone on the conservative side and say, no, don't come for our guns. Anyone who comes for our guns is a knee-jerker. That's the easiest thing to do. The hardest thing to do is take a stand that goes counter to the doxy of the conservative people, the right wing, anywhere you want to put it. I have studied the Second Amendment, and I will repeat again something that I've said over and over again. There are no absolutes for any of the amendments that we have. I have limitations on my First Amendment. My First Amendment is what I live on. I love my First Amendment. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press. But I have limitations. I can't get up here and say kill someone. I'd lose my job in a second. They'd bleep me out as they should and fire me. So I have limitations on my First Amendment rights. Do you understand that? And we have limitations on all of our amendments. The Second Amendment is not absolute. It does not allow you to own a tank. You can't buy a used T-34 tank with live rounds for the cannon. Why not? Well, because it's a military-grade weapon. Can't have a tank. You can't have an artillery piece. Why? Made for the military. So why should you be able to have a weapon that's designed for the battlefield? Tell me. Tell me what you need it for. Without yelling, without screaming, without calling me a communist, without calling me a sellout, without telling me that I belong in Berkeley. Tell me why I am wrong. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. No more children dead in the halls. I'm sick of it. Take a look at the pictures of the little kids killed there. 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, 17. Beautiful girls, beautiful boys, struck down at the beginning of their lives by a maniac who should have been in a mental hospital. Were it not for the ACLU and the Florida Civil Liberties Union, I can guarantee you this kid would have been in a locked facility and he wouldn't have done this. So the blame and the fingers can be pointed in any direction. But we have to talk realistically about this. There's only one open line at 855-407-282. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
First of all, we don't know who this maniac 19-year-old kid is. We know he belonged in a mental hospital. He was signaling that he was nuts. He was a gun nut. He liked to kill animals. He belonged, I'm sorry to report it, I know it doesn't fit the doxy, but he was a member of a white militia. That unto itself doesn't mean anything, but he was. He also dressed as a communist and supported ISIS. What does that mean? That CNN didn't pick up on. The pictures on michaelsavage.com of this SOB maniac dressed as a communist with a hammer and sickle and supported ISIS with his Allahu Akbar inquiries. But you didn't see that from Andy Cooper. Andy Cooper only reported he was a member of a white supremacist group. So the maniac was a maniac. He killed 17 people. Hero coach, the children, and we're all pointing fingers and saying, don't do anything. Now, interestingly enough, this is an odd one, very odd. There's a story of a child on an 8-hour flight from Germany to Newark who was screaming for 8 straight hours with a tantrum. The mother did nothing. The child was banging the ceiling, banging chairs. No one could do anything because if the flight attendants had said anything, the mother would have sued the airline with the help of the ACLU. Because, you see, children have unlimited rights to do anything they want. You don't want to interfere with their creativity. So everyone on the airplane had to listen to the toddler's 8-hour demonic screaming tantrum on the international flight. The mother didn't control him. She let him do whatever he wanted, running up and down the aisle. Now, what does this have to do with the shooter? Everything and nothing. Everything and nothing. Yesterday I said it's time for the preventive detention of dangerous youths on drugs. He could have been and should have been. He certainly shouldn't have owned an AR-15. How did he buy one a year ago? If he had been thrown out of high school because he was a troublemaker and he was in a school for troublemakers, why should he have been allowed to buy an AR-15? Tell me why there was nothing in the background check which asked about that. Like, have you ever been removed from a school? Why were the schools not contacted? Why? Because of permissiveness on every level, left, right, and center. Look at the poor children who were killed. He was reported to the FBI months ago, according to a blogger. The FBI did nothing. The FBI was too busy trying to prove a case of collusion between Russia and Donald Trump. They were all occupied, the FBI. They didn't have time for a thing like this. Under Mueller and whoever's running the FBI now, they had one job at the FBI, making sure that Donald Trump is indicted for something he didn't do. So, psycho killer is now seen cowering and shaking this morning as he was led into jail. The female lawyer who was assigned to him was seen patting him on the shoulder. Can you believe what a lawyer does? Does she now know she's the most hated person in the United States of America? I could see giving him a defense. I don't know what the defense is. I don't see any defense here. Oh, this poor child lost his mother to the flu, and as a result he went crazy. So you have to release him now from prison. No, that's not the answer. We need to reopen the mental hospitals closed by Governor Jerry Brown's liberal father. Gun control needs to be discussed. An AR-15 is not meant for hunting deer. It's made for killing people in a combat situation. So there's a lot of talking to be done now. That's the place to do it on talk radio. Why is there no middle ground on gun control? Tell me why there's no middle ground. Joseph, you're the only caller up there who's actually understanding what I'm saying. Joseph, what's your position?
Yes, hello, Dr. Savage. The bottom line is I'm going to use your home state and my former home state of California and New Jersey. But the problem is that what happened in Florida has a lot of parallels to that 1989 Stockton schoolyard massacre in California, where the law enforcement agencies knew how scummy that the shooter was and everything, and they let him off, and they essentially allowed him to commit these terrorist acts. The reality of it all is, though, is that in my former state of New Jersey, because I live in Pennsylvania right now, you had two bills that were recently pulled from the New Jersey legislature, which is controlled by Democrats. They wanted to basically say that if you own a gun, you waive all your privacy rights, and then you have to let police officers come into your home without a warrant. And another one where they want to put liability.
Well, that's totally crazy to give up your rights. I never suggested that.
But that's. But
I'm not calling for that. I'm saying this bug should have been in a bug house. Reopen the mental hospitals and take the handcuffs off the police.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE.
So everyone's pointing their fingers, and as you well expect, Andy Cooper automatically says he's a white supremacist, ban guns. That's the knee-jerk liberal response. The knee-jerk conservative response is don't touch our guns because we may need them to defend ourselves against some imaginary a militia, a threat. I don't know who they're afraid of. I don't know who you're going to defend. What, you're imagining street thugs come into your neighborhood? You're going to defend yourself like some John Wayne hero, and you'll be the last of the Mohegans holding down the fort. I don't know what you need the gun for, truthfully. What do you need an AR-15 for? Why? You're a hunter. Can't you hunt with another weapon? Why must you have an AR-15? A deer is already outgunned. You used to hunt deer with a bow and arrow, the last I remember. Then you could hunt with a single-shot target rifle, and then now the deer doesn't stand a chance. Why don't you just get a helicopter, buy a military helicopter, and go deer hunting? So, look, I can do, an absurd analysis here. Who is this guy? Now they say he's a white supremacist. He was a member of the white supremacist group. He probably was. I know his name is Cruz, but he's adopted. The Anti-Defamation League already jumped in. The shooter in this horrific ready, the ADL has stuck their fingers into the pie already to blame white people. That's sickening. I never liked the ADL. I never found them to defend anyone that I needed defending. They're not a civil rights watchdog group. They're a mad dog group of left-wing fanatics. The ADL said the leader of this white supremacist group said Cruz was brought into the group by another member and had participated in one or more OF training exercises. The ADL said. See, the ADL lives in a paranoid fantasy that any white person is a threat to them. Never heard a statement from the Anti-Defamation League about the threat of Islamofascism. Never heard about that. Never heard a threat from the Anti-Defamation League about anyone except white men. But nevertheless, this one was part of that group. So right away, the left-wing fanatics are making hay on it. They can raise some funds on it, have some dinners on it. So everybody has a finger to point. Everyone has someone to blame. Even the Treasury Secretary, Mnuchin, who's, by the way, a brilliant guy, signaled some support for gun control. He's the only one who had the guts to even say it, because you know what's going to happen the minute you say gun control. I saw it happen when I put it up on my Twitter yesterday. Savage, go back to Berkeley. Savage, go back to Berkeley. Savage, your liberal roots are showing. I also said other things. I said time for preventive detention of dangerous youths on drugs. And while we're talking about youths on drugs who commit mass murder like this, what drugs was he on? Oh, that we're not allowed to know. We know what gun he used. What drug was he on? Who manufactures it? What are the side effects? And by the way, while we're at it, was he on medical marijuana? So, are you crazy, Savage? Marijuana makes people peaceful. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. The new strains of marijuana are so powerful it makes people paranoid and insane, by the way. And while you're at it, research this. You know what hashish? You know what hashish is, right? Do you know where the word hashish comes from? It's from the Arabic. Its root is assassin. Because from Middle Ages on, Arabic assassins smoked hashish before going out on killing sprees. Did you know that? It can make people totally crazy and able to commit mayhem and murder. So, you know, you want to start looking into these things. Time for preventive detention of dangerous youths on drugs. Check that, yes. What about the medication he was on? Side effects of the SSRIs. I've talked about it before and yesterday. What else was he on? What other drugs was he on? Now, what about the ACLU and liberal judges and the ACLU? Why are they not being talked about, letting these people go wild in the streets? So, we have a lot to talk about. If you want to talk about it rationally, I'll do it. Let's go for the callers and see what they have to say. Okay, WABC Ken, line 7, your opinion counts. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I live in New Jersey. I own 2 AR-15s, and I don't hunt. I don't have the stomach to kill a deer. I never would. I just go target shooting with them a couple, 3 times a year. I enjoy owning the capability. They're owned legally, and it's my right to own them.
No, I know it's your right to own them, but what happens when someone not like you has the right to own one, and he goes and kills kids?
Yeah, but I mean, that was the failure of how we have the background system set up. In New Jersey, I go through extensive background checks. They check me out 27 different ways to Sunday. If I had belonged to any group or said anything incendiary, the New Jersey State Police, who conducts the background check, would have flagged me.
All right, so why is it that in Florida he was a member of a white supremacist group, he was on medication, he had been thrown out of a high school for being a troublemaker and threatening people? How did he get the background check passed in Florida?
Well, it's not a background check, is it then? Right? They didn't pick up the things in his background that would have flagged him as not being able to purchase a weapon like that. So that's really what the problem is. Their background check doesn't exist for all intents and purposes.
So in other words, their background checks in Florida need to be looked at as well. They're too lenient.
Oh, with all
it happens to be a rubber stamp state for guns. It's a live free and die state. It's a great state in many ways, and guns are much more prevalent in Florida than in almost any other state. People love their guns in Florida, and they like their freedom in Florida. But look what happened as a result of the lax background check. Is what we're saying.
Gun laws in the United States. It's an act of God to purchase a weapon legal in New Jersey. I went through the aggravation because I wanted to own the capability. I enjoy target shooting with them. They're locked up in a safe. I use them 2-3 times a year, and I simply enjoy owning them. That's why I have them.
Well, I understand you simply enjoy owning them, and I understand you're not him. I understand you're a responsible gun owner. But I am concerned about the irresponsible gun owners and the irresponsible background checks is what we're talking about then, Ken, aren't we?
That up then. You got to go to those states that aren't doing their due diligence and exercise proper control.
All right, so maybe we're getting somewhere today on the program, which is let's look at background checks and see how valid they may be. But what about the fact that he'd been thrown out of a high school for threatening people, being violent, getting into fights, and he was in a school for troubled kids? Why should he have been allowed to own a gun to begin with? You agree with me that he shouldn't have?
Before the gun, how did he even get in the school? When my daughter was in elementary school, if I went to visit her for a day or I had to bring her something.
Well, wait. I think he did not get in the school. He actually pulled the fire alarm to make the kids run out into the hall and outside. He started killing them outside, and then he went into the school.
Aren't the alarms in the school, in the building? The alarms aren't outside. They're in the...
All right. Well, I also understand there were police present on that campus. There was a permanent presence of police on that campus. So he obviously had done his homework and knew where the police were and knew how to get in and get around the police, Ken. You can't have a cop in every corner in every classroom. It's impossible.
That's the premeditation of the crime. So, if someone's intent on killing somebody and they do their research, how do you prevent it? You have to go back to the fact that Florida...
Well, wait, but hold on. If he had a gun, an AR-15, let's go back to my original suggestion, where you can have your AR-15, but you cannot have a 20-round clip or a 10-round clip. It's a fixed clip with 5 shots that you have to reload after 5 shots, which would slow you down, where if you were committing mayhem, you'll be killed. I think that would reduce the number of people who would be killed by such an individual with such a weapon. You disagree with that?
I just think it's pie in the sky. I can defeat that rule with a roll of duct tape. You take 3 5-round clips. You tape the one in the middle straight up and down, the 2 on the sides facing down, and you can flip it around, and you now have 15 rounds instead of 5.
No, I've seen that as well, but the fact of the matter is, we're talking about a clip of 5. I mean, that 5 shots was what the men had in World War I with a carbine. In World War II. They went out and fought the Germans. They fought the Japanese with the M1 carbine. They didn't have even a 20-round clip in those. I think there were 5-6 shots in them.
But they carried a bandolier with many of those clips with them. They could reload relatively quickly. But there's no magic bullet like that. You could tape those 3 5-round clips together, and you essentially have 15 rounds.
All right, then let's look at the social media postings where he said he wants to be a school shooter. He will be a school shooter. The ACLU says that the police have no right, nor do the intelligence agencies have the right to monitor these statements and do anything about it until there are body bags. So I would say the ACLU is the problem. Would you agree with that, or that's also not a solution?
Yeah, no, the ACL's not.
Why is Twitter? Why is Facebook? Why are these social media sites immune from any responsibility? We've asked this with regard to Islamofascists who have used media. Why have they not been forced to monitor them?
Because they're hanging their hat on the First Amendment, that's why.
Yeah, well, okay, then we need to talk about the First Amendment, I think. And the Second Amendment.
Don't forget.
Well, okay, I think you made a very good point. But let's go further in this discussion. The guns, the First Amendment need to be looked at. I mean, the First Amendment's not absolute. I live by the First Amendment. I can't yell fire in a crowded theater. I cannot call for the injury or death of anyone on the radio or write about it without losing my career. I've known this my whole life. I wouldn't do it anyway. I'm not a violent person. But if there are limits, as I've said, to this First Amendment, which there are, then there are obviously limits to the Second Amendment, which there are. Unfortunately, the limits are not sufficient to have stopped an event such as this. It's that simple. And again, it's very easy. I thought about it. I could be like all the other cowards in the media who pretend and wrap themselves in the flag and wrap themselves in the Constitution, and they pose on book covers with their arms crossed and leather jackets and act like, microphone tough guys. You can get up there and say, no, we don't want any limits. That's a liberal commie thing to say. We're Americans. We have a right to have an assault weapon. We're true Americans. Well, it's easy to do. That's malarkey as far as I'm concerned. And I'll present my positions, and some people don't like them already. If I read some of the comments, you'd see already what they're saying about me. But we have to stop the killing of these kids. We just have to. But let's talk about the antidepressants. People are writing, I've had friends on antidepressants who frankly lost all fear and common sense. And other people are saying many, many other things. Many people are saying, how dare you suggest that he was on medical marijuana? Another one saying, how dare you say institutions should be reopened? The government's liable to put all of us in them. See? So there's an answer to everything and a refutation to everything. And you're saying, Savage, how could you dare say liberals and the ACLU are responsible for this? The answer is very simple. They are. Back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
While we're talking about everything else under the sun, let's talk about our personal lives and having all the energy that you want all day long. Well, we all have fatigue when we get older. It's that simple, even for everyday activities. When you're 20, your body has a natural ability to maintain healthy circulation. By the time you hit 40, that ability decreases by half, and that leaves you feeling, tired. So what can you do to increase that youthful natural circulation and fight fatigue? I suggest drink Super Beets. Super Beets promotes the body's own natural ability to produce healthier circulation, increased energy, stamina all day long. Only Super Beets is made from beets that are grown to very exact standards, and then they concentrate them into superfood crystals. If you want to increase your own natural energy, just call 800-481-0504 or go to SavageLovesBeets.com. With your first order, you're going to get another 30-day supply of beets for free and indicator strips where you can test to see if they're really working in your body, and you'll see they do. And, of course, free shipping. Just call 800-481-0504 or go to SavageLovesBeets.com today. So we're going to go back to the tragedy now. The underreporting of kids. He's no kid, 19 years old, on the psych meds. The side effects of psychological psych medication is very, very important. We need to have a national discussion about reopening the nut houses. And I'm very sensitive to this discussion, for those of you who followed the show for years, because I had a brother who died in a horrible, terrible snake pit called Willowbrook on Staten Island. The asylums need to be reopened, and quickly. And people like this belong in an asylum behind bars. We cannot let them in schools. They certainly don't belong on the streets. The streets are filled with very dangerous people. Don't assume everyone in the streets is a poor down on their luck homeless person who belonged in a house. Some of them belong in a mental institution. Some of them belong in a prison. Some of them are just down on their luck. They need a job. But that's a separate problem for another day. Psych meds are a big issue. The ACLU's iron grip on this discussion is another big issue. The civil libertarians are as responsible for this as the NRA. But you're not going to hear anything from the media on the civil liberties complex, which is out of control. That's right. The civil liberties complex is out of control. There is a law on the books in Florida that would have permitted the cops to have arrested this killer and institutionalized him, but they were prevented from doing so because of the concerns of civil libertarians with regard to the overreach of government. Well, now you understand the result of this. So we're talking about reopening the nut houses. We are talking about stopping the ACLU and other like organizations with their overly broad concerns. We are talking about guns, and do we really need assault weapons to go hunting? And many of you are saying, yes, we need them. I disagree with you. I don't know what you need an AR-15 for. A man called and said he likes to target shoot with it. Well, okay, now you know the result of that one. So the FBI have been warned as well, and the psycho was on meds as well. He should have been in a bug house. The liberal judges and the ACLU are part of the problem. They're not part of the solution. So you want to start saying it's the white supremacist group? Sure, if you're the ADL and every white person is a threat to you, you can start saying white people are the problem. But that's not the answer here. You know it, and I know that's not the answer. The answer is complicated. The answer is multifactorial. And I invite you to join the conversation on the Savage Nation, 855-400-7282. Everything begins with an idea, including solving the school shooting epidemic in the United States of America.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Me, a cat, moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
So, I'm a dog, and I'm kind of new to this family, but I've noticed a trend. My humans do this thing where they go around and get all my toys and hide them in this basket. But it's always the same basket, and it's always the same place. And then they act so surprised when I find them. But I'm like, hello? That's where you put it last time. Humans are the worst at hide and go seek.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
February 14th, 2018.
And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
I hope it makes you feel good. I'm very cynical. I was always cynical. I was cynical at 5. What am I supposed to do? Welcome to the show. You think it's an act? You're crazy if you do. The shooting is bothering me now. The person of interest in the shooting, 20-year-old student. Person was on the internet last night researching how to build a bomb. Many deaths. I don't know what to say anymore. I'm going to ask you a question about the shooting. I am not a Second Amendment absolutist. No, I do not think the average American citizen is entitled to buy tracer rounds, as we saw with the shooter in Las Vegas. No, I do not believe the average American needs tracer rounds. Nor do I believe the average American needs explosive rounds. And I think we've gotten crazy on these issues, and I think we need to rein in some of the people who are getting access to guns. So, no, I'm not a Second Amendment absolutist any more than I'm a biblical absolutist. I have told you that. There's a Bible. There's the Old Testament. But if I were an absolutist, if you read Leviticus, everyone listening to the show would probably be stoned to death. So, I'm not a Second Amendment absolutist, but I still believe in God. Well, I meant to say, that's right. I combined the two is what I did. Then I talked about Valentine's Day horror stories, which I think is a good segment, and I'll continue it. I've also touched on the fact that neocon warmongers are celebrating the death of 200 Russian troops like it's something to celebrate. I never saw such sickness in our country. 200 of these Kremlin auxiliaries were killed, with hundreds more of the attackers wounded, says Ralph Peters of the New York Post. Blood running out of his fingertips as he types it with joy. Killing our Russians. They're our Russian friends. And so, my friends, if you start celebrating the death of Russian boys, you can soon start crying over the death of American boys. War is horror. If you want war with Russia, then join the Democrat Party, because they've been salivating for a war with Russia for a long time, along with the neocons who pretend to be constitutional conservatives who hate Russia and want war. Well, let them leave the media, put on a uniform, and go enlist in the military. They don't believe a word they say. They want your son to die for their stupid neocon belief system. I'm sick of it. War they want with Russia now over Syria. We don't belong there. Out of Syria. U.S. out of Syria. End of story. Oh, now I'm supposed to sit and worry about Iran in Syria. And Iran's threatening Israel. It's not my problem. How's that? I'm sick and tired of proxy wars for the United States. Israel has the most powerful military in the Middle East. I'm sick and tired of hearing about Israel this, Israel that. It's the tail wagging the dog. I don't want another war because of Israel. Do you get it? And I support Israel, and I always have, and I always will. They're surrounded by monsters. But it does not mean that we belong in the Middle East, and it does not mean we should have any of our boys die for a war in the Middle East. They have a very powerful military. They have nuclear weapons, and if they are threatened, then they should take care of it themselves. And by the way, the Saudis are on their side now. Let the Saudis help them, as they already are. But now we have a proxy war with Russia going on in Syria. And the idiot neocons are celebrating the death of 200 Russian boys. I don't like it. I'm sorry. And we're talking about the homeless situation. Now we're talking about horror stories for Valentine's Day. But the shooting is bothering me. Shooting at Florida High School. And there's no end to it. When is this going to end? Tell me. Tell me when it's going to end. How are you going to end the school shootings? Tell me how you're going to end the school shootings. If we're accepting this as a norm, it means we're a sick society. And I'm going to tell you something. We need a little more gun control here. I'm sorry. You don't like it. You don't want to hear it. Call me a communist. Call me what you want. It doesn't matter to me. Call me commonsensical. It's easy to sit here and thump your chest and say, oh, well, second absolutist, yeah. Put on a bomber jacket and a hat. Make believe you're a tough guy. Fold your arms in front of yourself on a book jacket. Everyone's a tough guy. A radio tough guy with a microphone. You're talking about death and dying here. You're not talking about selling or peddling a product. Now, I want to talk with you about that. We are the gun owners of America, and we've got to come to our senses here. How did this schmuck who just did the shooting in Florida get this gun? Many deaths. What if it was your kid? What would you be saying today? You believe in the Second Amendment? How did he get the gun? Who did he get it from? Some crackpot gun shop owner gave it to him? Bought it at a gun, whatever those, when they ever have these stupid things all over the place. Unlicensed guns, gun shows. You ever see what they're selling there? It's unbelievable to me. Well, I know, yeah, any day now the government's going to come to get you and you're going to have those armor-piercing bullets. You're going to defend yourself. You can't defend yourself. Stop giving yourself a fantasy like you're Superman. You had 200 heavily armed Russian troops who were just decimated by the United States military with a smart bomb and artillery. The government wants to get you. They're going to get you whether you have a machine gun or not. So let's clear our heads a little bit about this with the government coming to get us stuff. Okay, first of all, Obama's gone. That's number one. Number two, I have been a gun guy since I'm a little kid. I was on the rifle team at Jamaica High School. I'll repeat it again till you hear it. Most guys in the radio are not on rifle teams, I can guarantee you. So let me tell you that. I'm very distinguished in that regard. I actually shot 22 caliber target rifles in the basement of Jamaica High School in Queens, New York. Every high school, not every, but some high schools in every borough had rifle teams. And we had military guys who were our instructors, our coaches, came back from the Korean War, I guess. And these were hard men, and they taught us to respect weapons. None of us grabbed a gun and ran through the halls shooting anybody. Because if we were that nuts, the coach would have seen it in our eyes or our behavior. We never would have been allowed on the rifle team. They would have weeded us out right away as a nut. They knew what a nut was. We know who nuts are today. We're not allowed to say it. What, the ACLU is going to sue you if you call them crazy? Most of them belong in a bug house. Start me off on the ACLU. Put them all in the... You want to straighten the nation out? Take everyone in the American Civil Liberties Union and take everyone in the New York Civil Liberties Union and take all the judges who agree with you and put them all in a mental hospital. And then get back to me in 6 months. You'll have a better society. But that's not going to happen. We the people are stuck with this problem. When I was a young guy in New York, you couldn't own a gun in New York City. Sullivan Law. I know how it was passed. I know the whole story. You could not get your hands on a gun. Even gangsters were reluctant to carry a gun because if they were caught with a handgun, they went to jail. Did you know that? Even organized criminals did not carry guns because they knew it was a guaranteed jail sentence. Now, they had guys who did, but they didn't. The captains and above, they didn't touch a gun. They'd be crazy. They were smart enough not to have a gun. So what I'm saying to you is, well, maybe our gun laws are too lax with that regard, in regard to this shooting incident. So there it is. Now you're going to call me anything you want. I know I didn't pass the litmus test. Get me the jacket, the leather jacket, and I'll cross my hands in front of myself and put a picture up of a real tough guy, another radio rebel here. Everyone's a tough guy on the radio. They heard a backfire go off. Most of them would have a double heart attack. I'm sick of it. You know, war is hell. Guns kill. It's that simple. And we got to talk about it. And we are the people who have to talk about it. Don't let the left get control of this subject. They have no right to talk about it. They don't know what guns are. They don't know anything about guns. Most of them. Now, there are the violent ones who love guns. So we got to be careful of them. Tom on WABC, you're calling on this gun madness in America. Line 6, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mike, there is a solution to the assault rifle problem in America without outlawing one assault rifle. We outlaw interchangeable magazines, removable magazines. All magazines have to be fixed and have to be loaded by hand. And you cannot buy it. That's a very interesting suggestion. You mean the gun comes with a magazine locked into the chamber, the breech? Exactly. In fact, they have them in the gun stores now, but right now they're bolt action. They're like assault rifles modified to be bolt action guns, but you have to load them by hand. There's no interchangeable magazines. This way we can have our guns and without outlawing them, and yet we won't have these killing machines. It's a reasonable statement, but I want to know what the rationale is from the gun nuts that we need military grade weapons. And I used to hear it for years. Well, if we get an oppressive government, we can stand up to them. You've heard that, haven't you? Yeah, believe me, most of my conservative friends are too cowardly to fight the government. They're not going to go, risk their lives to do that. Maybe one or two. Well, first of all, it's a highly unlikely scenario of the government coming to get them. Yeah. Number two, we've all seen cop shows where tax squads break in a drug dealer's house. You're telling me if you stood there with a gun, you have any chance of surviving with your little machine gun in your house? Yeah. They'll blow the whole house off the street with a hand grenade if they have to. Or a howitzer. So this is a nonsensical story. If you're a hunter, you're a sportsman, then good. But you don't need a machine gun to kill a deer, do you? No, absolutely not. That's why we need a person like you to push this fix magazine thing out there. So sure. Go tell it to the people in the National Rifle Association. They'll put me on the Hitler list right now. I'll become public enemy number 1 to the NRA. Yeah, I stopped giving them years ago because they love to kill animals. These guys love killing elephants and everything. Number 1, number 2, they're a very, very political organization, as you would expect. They're a bunch of lobbyists. I thank you for that call. Good idea to think about. Good idea to think about. Now we'll go back to the, okay, Mitch on BOB says we need more guns. Okay, Mitch, let's have your point of view.
Okay, well, listen, let's look at it this way. We have cars that go over 75 miles an hour. Why wouldn't we, there's more car-related deaths in the United States.
All right, I'll give you the fallaciousness of that argument. A car is not designed to kill. A gun is. Any other suggestions?
Anything can be a weapon, right? There was a schoolhouse.
No, I gave you a rational answer. I'm a super logician. I give you a mathematically correct answer. Cars can go 170 miles an hour, but it doesn't mean it's designed to kill. A gun is designed to kill. It's not designed for any other reason.
Well, defense is obviously one of them. I mean, listen.
Yes, that is correct. You can defend yourself by killing someone who is threatening you, but I don't know why you need a machine gun to do that.
Well, okay, first of all, regardless of what weapon you want, you should be able to have. People died for those rights. And if we just cede one right after the other, then we're going to...
Well, I'm not so sure people died for the rights for the average Joe to own armor-piercing rounds and to own tracer bullets. I don't think so.
Well, I think we died in defense of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights.
Where is it written in the Constitution that we have the right to have tracer rounds and armor-piercing bullets? Where is it written? The right to bear arms is one thing. The right to bear machine guns with armor-piercing rounds and fixed bayonets is another.
Well, the way I look at it is until you do something to forfeit your right to have a right, then your right should be intact. And
well, I'm not an absolutist on the Second Amendment, nor am I an absolutist on the First Amendment. I live by the First Amendment, but I am restricted in what I can say. I cannot say kill a person on this show. I'd lose my career. So I have limitations on my First Amendment. Why should there be no limitations on all the other amendments? Thank you for the call. So you got to apply logic to these things, not rhetoric. I'll be back in a minute.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. February. 14th, 2018.
Okay, so look, we're talking about guns right now. There's another slaughter, this time in Florida, of innocent kids. And we are talking about the Second Amendment, which is the holy grail of the conservative movement. And I will tell you what police have told me. Common sense dictates that if you are interested in home defense, home protection of yourself and your family, the worst thing that you could be using would be an automatic or semi-automatic rifle. Because the rounds will go through a wall and probably kill your family. Maybe you don't know that as you put your arms in front of yourself in front of a mirror and puff your chest out and tell yourself you're a tough guy. But if someone breaks into your house and you pull out an assault weapon and you blast that person or try to, and all the rounds that you fire have to go somewhere, some of them are liable to go through one of the walls, and they could kill somebody in your own house, or God forbid, not God, that's bad enough. So the best home defense weapon, according to experts, is a shotgun. The absolute best is a shotgun. The second best is a pistol next to your bed, primarily a revolver, because you don't have to, load it and pull it back, chamber the round. I know it's only 5 or 6 rounds. I realize the limitations. But if you can't take care of that person in that bedroom within 5 rounds, you're dead anyway. It's too late. So, we can talk about this. I don't know how anyone can disagree with me, unless you're an absolutist, say, well, no, we shouldn't let anyone touch our gun ownership because it's a slippery slope. I've heard all the arguments, but it doesn't really hold water. There is no absolute requirement for assault weapons for the individual. And as I said, the First Amendment has its limits. I have my limits. Can't yell fire in a crowded theater. First Amendment limitations. Can't call for the death of anyone. First Amendment limitation. So there's common sense limitations on all the amendments. And the day we come to understand common sense is the day we might cure this nation of some of its problems, whatever the problems may be. And if you want to talk about that, go for it. WABC, Kevin, line 1, your opinion. What's the topic?
Dr. Savage, I'm an Iraq veteran. I've handled an M16, obviously, many, many times. I served in several hot spots. I've always thought it was crazy. Not just listening to you, I do not know why a civilian would need a weapon of war. Hunting, shotguns, handguns, yes, but weapons of war, it makes no sense. And our country's gun laws are lopsided. I'm in New York City. I'm in Queens. And I'm an Iraq veteran. I know how to handle a weapon. I can't get a handgun. But some guy in some other state can walk outside with an M16. It's crazy.
Interesting. Yes. Well, there's a new law that's going through Congress right now that will treat the reciprocity issue, which is that if you have the license to carry in one state, it will apply to another. And the liberals are panicking over that. They're terrified over that one. I live in a state where you're allowed to carry a gun in California in some places, or you get a conceal and carry permit. And I've often wondered why I can't go to another state like Florida and let that permit apply there. It's very cumbersome for me. But we agree on the assault weapon thing. I don't know why the average person needs it. I know that it's easy to say you do in order to sound like you're, one of the Klan, but I don't believe it.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Multiple fatalities, more kids shot by some lunatic in a school in Florida. We're going to sit here now and say we can't do anything about it. We don't know what to do. Second Amendment, we have the right to bear arms. That's what you're going to hear now. Then you're going to hear the loonies on the left saying we need to rein in all gun ownership. There's got to be a middle way. There's always a middle way, a sensible way. And when we find out what kind of gun he used, number one. Number two, we have to find out where he got the gun, maybe from a father, mother, who knows where. What medications he was on would be my number one question, because I've brought this up for years, if you listen to me. There are numerous examples of these shooters being on psychoactive medications, which are as responsible as anything else, if not more so. They alter the mind, they alter the perceptions, and they remove any restrictions on killing. these psychoactive drugs are extremely dangerous, especially in cases like this. If there are relationships, we should know about them, and we won't. We'll know what kind of gun he used. We'll know what kind of ammo he used. We'll find out where he got the gun from. But we are not allowed to learn what medications he was on, who prescribed them, and the side effects, because the pharmaceutical media industry is so powerful. The pharmaceutical media industry is overbearingly powerful. It's an old statement I have made. Look at the interlocking corporate directorships. That means who was on the board of directors of some of the major media companies, who was also on the board of directors of the pharmaceutical companies that make these psychoactive drugs. Then you might find the answer as to why you're not getting the answer. And I think we need to talk about this. But my main point, and I'll stick by it, I'm not going to play it down the middle and say, what do you think about it? Of course I'm interested in what you think about it, but you're not paying to listen to me to hear what you think about it. You're tuning in to hear what I think about it. And my opinion is quite clear on this. And I've said it in the last half hour. I guess I can repeat it again. The Second Amendment is not absolute, just as the First Amendment is not absolute. There are limitations on what anyone can say or write. You can't put something to pen and say, kill this person without getting arrested for it. You can't go on the radio and say something along the lines of killing somebody or you'll lose your job, as you should. So therefore, the First Amendment has limitations, as does the Second Amendment have limitations. We know that already. I mean, you're not allowed to own a tank, are you? Are there not limitations already? Let's play Aristotle for a minute. Well, I'll do a little Platonic logic with you, or Aristotelian logic. And I will say to you, are we allowed to own a tank that is operational? No, we are not allowed to own a tank that is operational. Why? Because there are restrictions on the ownership of such a heavy weapon. Are we allowed to own a fighter jet that's operational? No, we are not allowed to own a fighter jet that is operational. Why is that? For the reasons that we do not want you to have a weapon of war in your hands that can cause mass casualties. So therefore, my friends, if we are already restricted as to what weapons we can own because we don't want to cause mass casualties, I think that should also apply to assault weapons. And don't tell me that they're not assault weapons. Please, don't parse the words for me with the NRA. They are assault weapons. They're designed to assault an enemy strong point. So the question is, why is the average citizen entitled to have a clip with 20 rounds in it, and then another clip with another 20? Or like that crazy man in Vegas was able to bring in thousands of rounds of ammunition. Some were armor-piercing rounds. He had incendiary rounds. I believe he tried to have incendiary rounds, but he also had tracer rounds, which there's no reason in the world that a hunter or sportsman needs tracer rounds. These are military-grade rounds. So there are already common-sense restrictions, but not enough of them. And no hunter on earth needs an assault weapon. Now, you can go hunting, I suppose, with an AR-15 if you'd like. You can go hunting with any one of these fabulous weapons if you'd like to, hunt a poor little deer. Go ahead. Make yourself feel powerful. Go kill a poor little fawn with an AR-15 and come home with the carcass on your fender. You do what you want. If that makes you happy, at least you won't kill a child. Maybe you won't kill your family, you kill a deer. Who knows? Maybe that's the good part about people who have the bloodlust to kill innocent creatures. But I'm not saying restrict hunting. But you don't need military-grade assault weapons to hunt a deer. What do you think? Huh? We need these weapons? What for? What do we need these weapons for? What do we need these weapons for? KSFO, Sean, line 6, what do you think? Do we need these weapons?
Hi, Dr. Savage. I do not think we need these weapons, military weapons. And I'm coming from a law enforcement point of view. I've been a police officer for 6 years. Military-grade weapons should not be in the hands of civilians. There's too much liability associated with the rounds that leave the gun and the collateral damage with them.
Let alone, but what about people in law enforcement coming up against people with these assault weapons? You guys put your lives on the line every day. The last thing you need is a maniac with an assault weapon.
Absolutely. There's been one instance in my career where we've had someone with an assault weapon. That was the Bank of the West robbery from the department I work for in Stockton. Other than that, assault weapons should not be. They should be in the hands of law enforcement and military on duty only, not in the hands of civilians. And for the collateral damage and public safety.
Off duty, do you have guns in your house?
Yes.
What do you have in your house for home protection?
Yeah, for home protection, I have a revolver. I do not own an assault rifle. I have a hunting rifle, but it's a bolt action. I don't believe it's level 70.
But when you say you have a revolver, remember I said the best thing for home defense is a shotgun and a revolver? It's interesting you said a revolver, not a handgun. Because unless you have that handgun, that semi-automatic handgun, cocked and ready to fire, which is a stupid idea to have that next to your bed, that thing is not going to be able to be used very easily in the middle of the night. Am I correct?
Correct.
You know, what are you going to do? You're asleep and you hear an intruder? You think you're going to have the wherewithal to pull back on that slide and engage the round? I don't think so.
No, your first instinct is be to point and shoot. You should not have to worry about the fine details. Your first reaction should be point and shoot.
And the revolver generally doesn't jam, and it certainly doesn't jam as often as the others do.
No.
So that's another issue. I'm not saying we shouldn't have the right to those other weapons, but even those weapons, if you have, let us say, a 20-round clip in a handgun, and you have 20 clips with 20 rounds, you go into a school and kill 50 people. I don't know what this maniac has, but I'm sorry, it's time we had an intelligent discussion about gun ownership, and I thank you for joining it on the Savage Nation. It's a terrible topic. I wanted to just have fun today, which was the Valentine's Day. Did you get dumped on Valentine's Day? Do you have any Valentine's Day horror stories? I was going to breeze through the show today. You know, I started with neocon warmongers cheer Russia-U.S. clash. How could you sit here and celebrate the death of 200 Russian troops unless you're a maniac? How could you take pleasure in a thing like that? Well, they did in the New York Post, the neocon warmongers, salivating for a war with Russia. But I don't think we need to talk about that. Then I talked about why some small restaurants hate Valentine's Day. I gave you the reasons why. A lot of people will go out tonight. $3.7 billion on this evening out. That's a lot of money. But Valentine's Day is only the 107th best sales day for restaurants of the year, falling behind St. Patrick's Day. I guess all the drunks go out. Think of them mild, according to a San Francisco-based software company that analyzed credit card data from 26,000 restaurants last year. So the restaurants don't really like tonight. It's amateur night. But it costs them more money for a night like tonight than you may imagine. Patrons linger longer with the eyes and each, how are you, honey, or the extra drink. And so they can't flip the table over the course of the evening. They have to give up a 4-top for 2. That takes up money. More manpower needed to handle the crowd. That costs money. To speed service to get some of the gooey-eyed people out of there fast. Some restaurants shift to a pre-fee menu, which means wait staff cannot easily upsell diners on higher-priced and more profitable menu choices. Higher food costs tonight because suppliers jack up prices on items they know chefs are going to want to serve, like lobster. And owners of restaurants have to spend extra on extras to give away to customers, like a free glass of cheap champagne or roses. So if you're going to an upscale restaurant, like a fine French restaurant, they may actually see a boost in revenue. But for those that are more casual in nature, it's an under par day. But having said that, I mean, I'll throw in a little more of this if you want. I mean, I don't know if I could talk about the guns much longer. My guts are hurting me over it. I have pain in my stomach over it. You know, you're talking about 50 kids who were shot here. Do you know what that means? And why is this happening over and over again? What do we need these weapons for in our houses? Can't we have an adult discussion about what weapons we actually need? Or we're not allowed to? Now call me a supporter of Dianne Feinstein. Call me what you want. Just make sure you spell Savage correctly when you check your book. Okay, my friends, what do you think? Valentine's Day, assault weapons, the Olympics I could care less about. For some reason, I don't know why. I mean, I'm not that interested in it. What do you care? Porn star claims she's free now. What a piece of garbage that one is. Porn star to talk after Trump lawyer violated an undisclosure deal. Do I care what a porn star has to say about anything? No, but the New York Post does. The Daily News does. Kaepernick rips Goodell's wife. Who is Kaepernick, anyway? Where'd this idiot come from? What, his claim to fame is he spit on the American flag by taking a knee? I should pay attention to this dirtbag? He's a filth, a nobody to me. A filth, a nobody. I'm sick of him. And the media can't get enough of this bum. But that's the media that we live with. Several killed in a fiery Long Island wreck that involves stolen car. What can I say about that? Okay. Here's a guy suing the city of New York because he said being a cop made him fat, so he wants disability pay. You hear this? A fat slob from the donuts and the garbage he was eating put on weight while he was a cop, and now he's suing the city of New York because he's saying he deserves disability pay. This is what lawyers have done to this country. And you know what I think about most lawyers like this? Like the lawyer yesterday. All right, did we lose the connection? No, still good. Did I get a phone call? I pressed the wrong button. I don't want to take a phone call. I'll get a double migraine. Let's see. Pence. Russian meddling didn't change U.S. election results. Again, that? Dossier. I can't talk about that topic, please. Not a good topic for me. Migraine. What else is in the news? Oh, there's so much in the news I don't want to talk about. Actually, I only want to talk about the killing and what you think we should do about the gun maniacs in this country. When are we going to say enough is enough? Tell me what has to happen. Because there's someone else's children? We have to do it. We on the conservative side are the ones who have to do this. We can get control of this. This is the Savage Nation. If you want to get control of the gun issue, the phone number is 855. Don't call it because there's no room.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
All right, so they arrested the shooter now. Former student, part of a gun chat online. We don't know what he looks like, but everyone has the race already picked out. Right? You can pick your favorite race and say he did it. Then you now throw in Muslim. No, he looks like a white kid. But that's irrelevant. What's relevant here is the gun issue. That's the issue, and the drug issue. Part of a gun chat online suspect. Social media pages show heavy interest and involvement with guns. No indication he was injured, but taken to the same hospital victims are being taken to? Not in my book, not in my world. Someone does this, the fingers go into a paper cutter before we remove them from the school. You put the fingers into a paper cutter and cut the trigger fingers off. It might put a damper on the next guy who wants to pick up a gun and make himself into some famous hero. Cut the fingers off. No, that's not going to happen. Just fantasy. You know those old paper cutters, those long ones that you trim paper with? The real long ones with nice leverage on it, like about a foot long. The police have them in their car, but the mini version. They take the shooter out and they cut off 2-3 fingers, and they seal them up. I mean, you don't be vicious about it. You put gauze on it. Then you have a reason to take him to a hospital. What's he in the hospital for now? To take up a bed that someone he shot could be taking up? Crazy country! Liberalism is killing us on every level. Like in New York a few weeks ago, remember? My nice Middle Easterner brought in on chain migration. Oh, no, visa lottery, the one that Schumer loves so much. The visa lottery immigrant who ran people over on the walkway in Lower Manhattan. He went to Bellevue before the victims did. He had already the religious book, the halal meal, smiling in the bed. The ACLU was there giving him a pedicure. What kind of country are we living in? I never saw anything like this insanity. It's all about lax laws. It's all about crazy drug-addicted judges in filthy black robes. It's the judges, like those bums who overturned the president and the will of the people who said, oh, no, we want to keep DACA. We don't want to keep DACA. We want them all out of here. You want me to raise the stakes? No, I don't want to give DACA any leeway. You want to raise the stakes? You want to cause a real riot in this country? Stop pushing us around. We are dreamers first. The poor of this country deserve a break first. Not interlopers. Don't tell me they're just kids who came here against their will. I've heard that garbage before. To Nancy Pelosi, every one of them is an Einstein or an Albert Schweitzer in the making. Lax laws, judges who are crazy, who belong in a mental hospital. You ever see what a judge is today? Take a look in New York. You'll see what a judge is. Take a look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a Supreme Court justice, no less. A crazy woman from the first day. the head of the ACLU legal division. She belongs in the Supreme Court. My dog would have done a more balanced job than her. Well, I'm getting worked up, so I have to now talk about sleep. Why? Because I'm a good sleeper, and I'm going to tell you about Casper mattress. It changed my life. I love it, and I get a great night's sleep every night. I never used to get that. You have to use a Casper mattress as I do. You see, they have engineers. They work nonstop, prototyping, collecting data. They engineer what's certainly the most comfortable mattress in the world, a combination of foams that provide the right pressure relief, alignment, and thanks to the breathable material, you're going to sleep in a nice, cool way. And the mattresses are not junk. They're built to last for years. Try it yourself for 100 nights in your own home, risk-free. Ship it to you for free in a compact box. And let me tell you this, if you don't love that mattress, you don't have to push it back in the box. They'll send somebody to pick it up, give you back your money, no questions asked. And there's a big deal going on right now. Go to Casper.com, and take advantage of $125 off on purchases over $1,250 and $200 off on purchases over $2,000.
Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
Well, we're back on The Savage Nation. I'm sitting here looking at the local paper. Another 49ers was arrested. How many of them have not been arrested? How is it? Where do they get these guys from? Foster's latest arrest puts 49ers between business, rock, ethical, hard place. How many 49ers have not been in and out of jail? Why does anyone go to their games? I don't understand this. How did this happen? Football used to be a clean sport. Now it seems everyone's in and out of prison. How did that happen? I used to look at the Army-Navy game. They're running the slush, the snow. I admired them. I don't watch football anymore. I don't want someone who spits on my flag. There's more I could say, but it's national radio. I'll have to hold it for when I'm a blogger, which I hope doesn't come sooner than later. Bloggers, the latest thing, blogger. I'm a blogger. What do you do for a living? I'm a blogger. How much you make a year? Well, nothing yet. I'm about to be discovered one day. Blogger. Used to call it graffiti, a blogger. Someone who wrote stuff on a toilet wall. That was a blogger. There was a spray can in the toilet stall. Now they do it on like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. There's an article on my website which you have to look at because if I'm not for myself, who will be? Savage Rules New York Talk. I know you don't want to hear it. Many of you are just going to be green with envy. But I'm once again the top talker in New York City radio. For years running, 2 years running, Savage has dominated Gotham's talk airwaves as the Savage Nation has consistently ranked as the #1 program on WABC since April 2016 with the key demographic of adults 25-54. Although Savage broadcasts from San Francisco, Savage has remained close to his roots as the true voice of New York. Beating Sean Hannity for years, New Yorkers have come to expect Michael's acerbic wit and higher education to get them through their difficult days. From politics to pasta, you get the picture. And it's up on michaelsavage.com. I invite you to read it. And we'll talk about those topics. We'll talk about, have you ever been dumped on Valentine's Day? I still want Valentine's Day horror stories. I myself don't believe in these holidays. To me, they're invented by greeting card companies, gift companies. Look, everyone's got to make a living, right? So in order to sell things, you need holidays. You invent them. I don't even know where it came from. It's like St. Paddy's Day drove the snakes out of Ireland. Where'd they all go? I don't even know where the snakes went. Why do we celebrate St. Patrick's Day? I have no idea. We're not in Ireland, and there's no snakes here to worry about, except those in the left, like Shifty Schiff. He's the kind of snake who should be forced to live in Ireland. Meanwhile, the neocon warmongers are cheering the death of Russians, and they cannot wait for a blowout between the U.S. and Russia. They're actually cheering war with Russia. Can you believe this? And they call themselves conservatives. This is how sick the country has become. Macron threatens to bomb Syria. That's really great. This is not good. France will strike if proven chemical bombs used in Syria. There are no chemical bombs. This is not good. This is not good. Israel wants war with Syria. Now France wants war with Syria. I don't know which side the United States is under Trump. I can't figure it out, to be honest with you. And now Damascus is warning Israel of more surprises because an Israeli F-16 was, frankly, it was a big black eye for the Israelis, who are seen as almost above, reproach with regard to military. They got shot down. Why? Because the Russians have about the most advanced anti-aircraft fire in the world that I've ever read about. I think it's the SAM-3. You know that they could fire a missile against a plane to 60,000 feet, and that missile is the size of a telephone pole? It's unbelievable to me how advanced the SAM is, and maybe a SAM-4 by now. But they got shot down, so now Syria, Israel, France, U.S., it's a terribly dangerous situation. A United States military jet actually blew up a Russian battle tank in Syria as well. It looks like we're moving to a terrible showdown in Syria. It's awful. An Iraqi T-72 main battle tank destroyed in a coalition attack during Operation, whatever it's called now, Desert Storm. Can anyone tell me why we are fighting in Syria since ISIS has been driven out? Why are we there? Can anyone listening to this show tell me why we should be fighting Assad? Can anyone listening to the show tell me what we have at stake in Syria and why we should be taking the side of Israel in this situation? Because, I'm on the side of Israel. Please don't paint me into a corner. Not everything Israel does is right. Not everything Israel does is wrong. But in this case, Israel should stay out of Syria. I don't know why they're so paranoid about Assad. It was only Assad who protected both the Christians and the Jews against the fanatical Islamic State. What the hell is going on over here? Has Israel lost its mind? An anti-aircraft fire down an Israeli warplane returning from a bombing raid on Iran-backed positions in Syria on Feb 10. That's only 3 days ago. This is the most serious confrontation between Israel and Iranian-backed forces based across the border. Okay, so you could say it's not that they're worried about Syria right now. They don't want Iran getting a foothold in Syria and then using Syria as a launching pad against Israel, because as you well know, Iran is the danger here, not Syria. Okay, that I understand. So it's Iran again. It's Iran again. Now, what are we going to do about it now? Scream about Iran and scream about Obama giving Iran money and scream about this and scream about that? What is the good about screaming on talk radio? What's it going to get us? Nothing. It's a mark of impotence. The louder you scream, the more impotent you sound. It's that simple. Here's an interesting story for you. A Pennsylvania pastor was found in a parked car in a suburban street with a bound naked man in his car. The pastor says it's no big deal. He was merely counseling the naked man that the cops found him bound up in his car, nylon rope in a parked car. He says, I have nothing to hide. George Nelson Gregory, age 61, was sitting in the backseat of a car parked outside a house in Homestead, Pennsylvania, when cops, responding to a call for a suspicious vehicle, spotted a naked man bound with nylon rope in the front seat, 11:30 at night on Friday. A witness told police the naked man got out of the car in full view from his daughter's window. But the pastor, Mr. Gregory, told the officers that he and the other unidentified man were just playing in a consensual setting, adding that they, quote, meet up from time to time to play with each other, according to a criminal complaint obtained by the station. And despite being inside a car in a well-lit public street, one witness said he saw the naked man from his daughter's window. The pastor, Mr. Gregory, believed they were in a private setting, cops said. This is called the death of a nation. Why does CNN continue to praise the evildoer of North Korea, a man running it's probably the most dangerous place on the planet for human beings to reside in? And I ask it in another way, which is, should CNN's Jeff Zucker be charged with sedition for glorifying North Korea's slave state? Yes, of course he should. Jeff Zucker should be taken out in handcuffs. This is not freedom of speech. This is sedition. That's my answer to that question. Do you still read newspapers? I realize newspapers are dying, and according to the latest report and prediction, as seen on the Drudge Report, linked up, I don't know who it was, some bigwig in the news business, said that newspapers, as we know them, will be dead in 10 years. There'll be no longer print editions. They will only be digital. So, okay, and what is that telling us? What is that telling us? New York Times CEO says print is dead in 10 years. Okay. Do you still read newspapers? Why have you stopped reading newspapers? I'll tell you why I stopped reading newspapers. It's not solely because the editorial content is all so biased against family values, against America, against the military, against police, against the real church, against God. It's not only because of that I stopped reading newspapers. It's because it's easier to click onto a site and get the newspaper online. Next question. Have you cut back on your Facebook time? Why? Now, this is an interesting story. Old Zuckerberg is panicking because his old fabulous site, Facebook, is kind of losing listeners. They're still phenomenally successful, don't get me wrong. The losers who go on Facebook and stay on it, who have no lives, are saying that they are tapping out after 20 minutes now instead of 3 hours. One woman says, the less time I spent on Facebook, the better I felt. More than a dozen U.S. users interviewed by USA Away said that they are starting to question their always-on relationship with the giant social network. 1 in 5 Facebook users, 18%, say they're using Facebook less than they did a year ago, according to a new poll of 1,000 people by a market research firm run by a pollster who used to work at Facebook. So why are people going away from Facebook? Have you ditched your Facebook time? You may say it's not you, that's not what you do, you listen to talk radio. Okay, but I think a lot of you do both. And maybe you've gotten over your Facebook addiction. I don't really know. Many people have taken refuge in Facebook. What's happening now is that because almost all of the Facebook stories that are linked are anti-Trump, anti-America, anti-military, anti-police, people are turning it off. I think that there's the big backlash is starting to be felt by the folks who run these social media networks. We've been talking about Valentine's Day horror stories. You can't believe the stories we are hearing. And we also had Secretary Ben Carson on from HUD. I mean, I wish this government a lot of luck. I don't know. If you're not going to make people work, you're going to give money to junkies. You're going to give money to alcoholics. You're going to give money to every kind of deviant on the planet. And then you're going to give them a $250 a night hotel room. What's the incentive to work? The problem is we have a society that gives everybody something for nothing. And we, the workers, hate it, in plain English. We don't want it anymore. I'm a tough love kind of guy. I think the grapes are wrath. I'm sorry you're down on your luck. That's not my problem. I didn't cause it. You want to take care of these people? As I said, you build housing 100 miles outside of a city on cheap land. I didn't say toxic wasteland. I said cheap land. You build basic barracks for the homeless. And if they cannot take care of themselves in these barracks, no drugs, no alcohol, they can't take care of themselves, you put them in a mental hospital or put them in a prison. Because this cannot go on. The society cannot take care of millions of people who refuse to work. Many of them choose to be homeless. Don't tell me everyone has a sob story. Some do, some don't. And don't tell me, but for the grace of God go I. Okay, I'm not winding up in the gutter. You have self-respect, you're not winding up in the gutter. Oh, you have a right to live in a city. You hear that argument from the left? They have a right to live in their home. They have a right to live in the city. No, they don't have a right to live in a city. That's how Nassau County was developed. That's how Sonoma, the county Suffolk was developed. What do you think the Long Island Railroad was developed for? It's for people who wanted to live in the city and couldn't. They had to commute to Suffolk County at the time to cheap housing, to raise a family. The same with Nassau, the same with Queens. It's always been the same story, but no one I'm supposed to have an apartment on Park Avenue because I want it. Where'd this come from? I never saw anything like this insanity. Except here. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
We're continuing our coverage of another tragedy of the shooting in a school in Miami. We have to have an intelligent adult discussion about assault weapons, what they are. Don't tell me they don't exist. They do exist. What I'm about to play for you is very, very disturbing. It will shatter you, and if you're not used to loud sounds and the sounds of a gunfire, I suggest you turn the radio off. I'm not doing this for effect. A kid who was in the classroom with this maniac took the following and put it up on Twitter. Let's listen.
Holy shit. Oh my God!
I'm sorry, I tell you, I have chills in my legs, my neck, my back. 14 people injured, at least 7 dead. And they don't know what he used. I mean, it was a high-caliber handgun or a high-caliber rifle, assault weapon. And it has to stop. Something has to be done to stop this. And I've been arguing with many people on this show. We do not need military-grade weapons in the hands of the average person. We do not need psychoactive medications dispensed like M&Ms to our children. Because you know and I know the SSRIs are intimately associated with violence and suicides. Only the pharmaceutical manufacturers so own the media through interlocking corporate directorships that you will never hear a discussion about the medication that this piece of human trash was on. Also, we can raise the stakes on punishment. Anyone who commits a vehement act like this will have his fingers cut off within 12 hours. If they can absolutely associate this person with a shooting like this, he's not going to be on Good Morning America from a jail cell. He's not going to be lauded by the drug addicts on HBO. He's not going to be covered by Vice. He's going to have his fingers cut off in a paper cutter for the world to see. Even a person on drugs, even a sick person on drugs, would be terrified to have his fingers cut off. I know it's not going to happen. I recognize that some crackpot judge from NYU would say that's unconstitutional. Unconstitutional. Well, I'll tell you, that judge is unconstitutional. When the Constitution was written, it was never written with the intent to have crazy, drug-addicted judges in filthy robes overturn laws that make sense. That's what's unconstitutional. But we're in the grips of an insanity in this country like you can't believe. Like an absolute power of a filthy, dumb judge in a black robe. He has the absolute power more than a president. Who gave this judge the power to do the things he's doing, to overturn a president and overturn an election? Who gave him the power? Who gave him that power? Who gave the ACLU this power? Nobody. They took it. They stole the power. Suspected shooter in custody. 7 people dead. 14 injured. We will not hear about the drugs this idiot was on. We'll not hear about the drugs. We'll hear about the weapons. And we can talk about the weapons and what needs to be done, but I'm sorry, we need to talk about the drugs. SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They're very helpful for some and very dangerous for others. There's numerous school violence, acts of violence, suicides associated with SSRIs, because there's only so much serotonin that your body can preserve until eventually the levels disappear. The person goes into hypermania or hyperdepression and goes insane. Hold the drug companies responsible. When will that ever happen?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
He's been a troubled kid, and he'd always had like a certain amount of issues going on. He shot guns because he felt that it gave him, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? An exhilarating feeling. I don't know how
did you know about his guns?
He showed me personally through his phone and stuff like that. I stayed clear of him most of the time during my time in alternate school. I didn't want to be with him at all because I felt as though I didn't want to cause any conflict with him because that's the impression he gave off.
The shooter has been identified as Nicholas Cruz, age 19. He had been banned from carrying a backpack on campus due to his alleged issues, and they knew he was a nut. And a teacher said, who taught him, there were problems with him last year threatening students. He was asked to leave campus. Tell me why he was not arrested before this happened. Answer. It's simple, ACLU. He has rights. He had the right to kill someone else's children. Since most of the people at the ACLU have no children, they don't care about your children. No, he had no rights. Once he threatened people, and he had guns, and he was a nut showing pictures of guns, he's a bug. Put him in a bug house. It's that simple. The kids knew he was crazy. The teachers knew he was crazy. He showed pictures of the guns. He shot guns because it gave him an exhilarating feeling. People stayed away from him. Troubled former student obsessed with firearms. Identified previously as a potential threat to his fellow classmates, and yet he was on the street. Thanks to all the judges from NYU and Columbia who moved down to Florida, who made sure that your son and daughter could be killed in a schoolroom. Last year, problems threatening students, asked to leave campus, but they couldn't arrest them because then one of the lawyers from the Florida ACLU would have arrested the teacher or arrested the police who were arresting him. That's because most of them have no children and no families. So we're living in a country that's out of control, and it's not because of Trump. It's because of the radical left, mainly the judges and the lawyers on the left. And there's a solution to this as well. You know what the solutions are, and they have to happen, and they will happen. Eventually, the country will have enough of these crackpot judges, these psychopaths in black robes who have unlimited desire to cause mayhem in our society. Here's a terrible tragedy, right? Troubled former student obsessed with guns, threatened people, and he wasn't in jail. Wasn't even in a mental facility. Why? Because he has the right to walk the streets until he kills somebody. Why does he have that right? Because Marvin from the ACLU said that he had that right. Now, what makes you believe that the lawyer with the ACLU is rational and sane? What makes you think that someone who's insane working for the ACLU with another civil liberties group knows what they're talking about? Just yesterday in New York, there was a story. Some graffiti artists had defaced the building, and the owner of the building was going to knock it down anyway, a large, an industrial building somewhere. A judge, Judge Block in New York, awarded $7 million to the graffiti artists because their art was destroyed without their permission. Now, you tell me Judge Block is not a blockhead, a nut who belongs in a mental asylum? Half these judges on the left side of the aisle belong in a mental hospital. Now you got a case like this. Troubled former student, obsessed with guns, showed other students pictures of guns, should have been arrested, preventatively detained, put in prison, put in a mental hospital given the care he needs. Instead, there are dead children, wounded children, teachers who are going to be shattered for the rest of their lives, all because of liberalism, which is a mental disorder. Liberalism, the tolerance that you hear about, the tolerance that lets bums defecate in mailboxes in San Francisco, the tolerance that lets people walk around naked in San Francisco, calling it an art form, the tolerance. Well, let me go down the list another time. I don't have the desire right now. Nicholas Cruz. Nicholas Cruz, that's the shooter. 19 years old, thrown out of school because he was a troublemaker and a bug. And, of course, he had rights. He had the right to kill children. Ask Marvin from the ACLU, who moved to warmer climes, to be around his mother somewhere in an old age home now in Boca Raton. I'm sorry, it's time. We got to crack down in this country. We need tougher laws. We need judges who are on the left side of the aisle to be investigated for what they're doing to this country. That's not the law, what they're enacting. They're not enacting any law. They're making it up as they go along. There's got to be harsher punishments, automatic death penalty for any kind of multiple fatality in a school shooting. Automatic. And even worse than that. They need to be humiliated, nationally humiliated, have their fingers cut off in public within 30 days of being found responsible for the shooting. I guarantee you, no matter how nut this person may be, no matter how unstable a person may be, the one thing they don't want to be is maimed in public and shamed in public. They want to come away as heroes. So, now he's going to be what? I'm sure Good Morning America's on the way. I'm sure Katie Couric is on the way. I'm sure Andy Cooper has his shorts on and his roller skates to get down there as fast as he can to interview him in the hospital. No interviews, no grandstanding. No, cut the fingers off, the gun fingers, cut them right off within 30 days. And I guarantee you they'll think twice. Don't tell me they're all deranged. They're not all deranged. They're temporarily insane, but they're not permanently insane. And when they're thinking about doing it, they'll think, gee, I'm liable to lose my fingers after this. I won't be a hero. You think this is too harsh? Maybe it's too harsh. Maybe it's illegal. But I'm allowed to think out loud. I'm still allowed to think out loud, and I can still dream. I still have a dream of an America that has laws that make sense. Now let's see what you have to say. KKOH, Reno. Tom, line 3, go ahead, please.
I think that you don't hear about gun shootings at gun shows because there's a lot of people who are armed. And to make it not too facile, anybody I think who has a concealed weapon permit, particularly if they're a teacher, should be allowed to carry their gun in the classroom. These people, the gun-free zones are target-rich zones to these people. And although the cutting off the fingers is an interesting idea, I never thought of that. It probably won't sell, but to allow armed people in the schools diminishes the likelihood that these people will be able to go in there and maybe they'll shoot one person, but they're not going to shoot 8 or 10.
Well, up to a point, I would agree with you, but I don't think there are that many teachers who want to become policemen. I don't think people who go into the teaching profession are necessarily the type that want to be able to carry a gun and shoot a student who's shooting other students. So it sounds good, in theory. I don't think that many teachers want to carry weapons to school. Truthfully, I'm a former teacher. Most people who go into teaching are very kind and gentle people. They're not the type that want to get into a shootout. So, I mean, look, we're discussing it. It's a problem here. There's got to be a solution. There's always a solution to a problem. But there are so many cases of these multiple shootings in high schools now that enough is enough. And we're not having a discussion on it. The country is not having a serious enough discussion on this issue. Of course, it's going to fall along the fault lines of the left and the right. The left will say seize all guns. The right will say don't touch any of our guns. I know how this is going to go. There's got to be some balance here. And the punishments are not harsh enough for this kind of insanity. You think I'm joking? Cut the fingers off? You think I'm joking? I'm a little bit of the Saudi in me when it comes to a thing like this. You cut the fingers off. Within 30 days of finding that person was associated with a shooting like this, the fingers are cut off, surgically removed. It will put a damper on it. Say it can't be done. Why can't it be done? Anything can be done. If you could get a crackpot judge from NYU who could make up a law about DACA, which he made up on the spur of the moment in a toilet last night, and then say he read the law, he made the law up, and this is that. There's no law. He made the law up. They write the law. So write a law. If you're found involved in a multiple shooting in a school, and within 30 days of proving you're the shooter, your fingers are amputated. Say, oh, that can't be done. Why? You want the shooter to have his fingers? For what reason? You're going to rehabilitate the nut? You're not rehabilitating this nut. Secondly, there should be an automatic death penalty for this kind of crime. I don't give a damn if you tell me he's mentally ill. I'm sick and tired of that defense. Almost all crimes are convicted by mentally ill people, either temporarily or permanently mentally ill. That should never be an excuse. Well, Hitler was mentally ill also. I should have excused him for killing all of those millions of people. Don't give me mentally ill as an excuse. That's a lawyer job. No, so we have to have this discussion. There's so many other things in the news. I'm not getting to them. Florida school shooting suspect, troubled former student. Tell me why he was not preventatively detained. Tell me why he wasn't in a lockdown facility. Tell me why he was able to walk into that school. Troubled kid. Another teen, troubled kid, always had a certain amount of issues, shotguns because he felt it gave him an exhilarating feeling. No kidding. I've been at shooting ranges. What, you think I'm not leery when I go to a shooting range? You think everyone I think there is a wonderful Second Amendment absolutist? A true blue? Half of them are nuts. Yeah, very high risk at the shooting ranges of deranged people. I see them. The fatties with the guns, the impotent ones with the guns for whom Viagra doesn't work. Watch out for them. So, no, guns are very, very interesting. Who's obsessed with them, who plays with them, the guy oiling them in the basement and looking at pictures on the wall. Come on. Don't give me this true blue George Washington, Paul Revere stuff anymore. I'm sick of it. And I'm a guy who's owned guns since I've been able to own guns. I was on a rifle team. Gives me a certain credibility in the area. I'm not a typical New Yorker who's afraid of guns. I was on a rifle team in high school. It's very unusual, actually. It's probably as rare as a houndstooth. How many people do you know could say they were on a high school rifle team in a city high school? None. None. Maybe you were. Maybe you went to my high school. I'm talking about a high school in the City University of New York. But we were taught guns can kill. We were taught all the safety rules around guns. And I will tell you something else. The teachers or the coaches on that rifle team were all hardened men probably from the Korean War. at that time, they looked at you very carefully. You didn't automatically get on the rifle team. If they suspected you even had a taint of the bug job in you, you were not on that rifle team. They had the power to say, I don't like this kid, I don't want him on the team. They didn't have to go to a rule book. They had their instincts. The kid was a bug, a nut, somehow a weakling, something was wrong with him in the eyes. They didn't let him on the rifle team. Not today. No, today they make him the valedictorian, hold him up as a role model. Comes to school dressed as let's not go there. Please don't get me started with the insane society I'm living in. The mass hysteria of our society is now out of control. Okay, so we're hitting a point now in the show, a quarter to the hour here, and I got to take that break. Then I'm going to come back and take your calls and give you the latest update on Mr. Cruz. I wonder what he's demanding in a hospital right now. I wonder how many members of the media are outside asking him for an interview and a book deal. Think about that.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
All right, now, first of all, there were police on duty in this school at all times. 2 cars of law enforcement on that campus on a daily basis. They were called school resource officers. So for those of you who think that they weren't prepared, they were. How did he get on the campus with a gun when he was known to be a nut? He was known to be a gun nut. He was known to be a troublemaker. Other kids avoided him and shunned him. Answer? The answer is simple. In a more sane society, he would have been put into a facility and prevented from killing. That can't go on, though, because of the mentally ill American Civil Liberties Union. Everyone in there is crazy. By definition, anyone who would work for the ACLU, especially the diehard lawyers, they're mentally ill. There's no such thing as absolute freedom. That's insanity. So they would say, oh, you can't preventively detain him. You got to wait until there's 18 body bags in the school until we give them a fair trial. Well, that's because most of them have no children. Did you hear the sound of the shooting? You want to listen to it again? Again, if you're a sensitive person, turn the radio off. Otherwise, listen to what a kid recorded. You'll know what we are talking about. Listen to the sound of the weapon on the Savage Nation.
Holy shit. Oh my God!
Those children will never be the same again. The ones who didn't get killed will never be the same again. The teachers will never be the same again. We have to be able to recognize mentally ill children, those who are in distress, those who have challenges in these areas, and get them out of the damn schools. And I don't care how many lawyers get in the way, throw them in jail as well. Enough is enough already with these lawyers. One crackpot lawyer from the ACLU, federal judge. What's a federal judge mean today? Appointed by who? Barry Obama? The portrait expert? He appoints a judge. What's a judge that he appointed? They make the law up as they go along. He overturns Trump on DACA. He's not a judge. He's a left-wing fanatic. They make the same laws up about how you can treat a mentally ill, dangerous person. That's why the streets are filled with bums who are dangerous. Go take a walk in a major city. Who has more rights? You or the bum with the golf club in his hand? The bum who urinates in the street has more rights than you do, the taxpayer. Why? Lawyers! Lawyers, the ACLU lawyers. That's why. There is a limit to civil liberties. And they are not elected officials. They have usurped the law. They have usurped civility. They have usurped the whole concept of libertarianism. This is not about liberty. This is about creating chaos and mayhem. There are solutions to these problems. You have to identify mentally ill people. You have to see where they are challenged. We have to address those issues in a broader manner. But most importantly, we have to protect the innocent by arresting those who have a high probability of committing such a crime. And if the lawyers get in the way, then make sure the lawyers don't get in the way. Because there's no such thing as absolute rights. None whatsoever. And a sane society recognizes that. And I'm not Plato. I'm Michael Savage. We must be able to recognize students or people in general who are in distress, who may have challenges in these areas, and not only support them, but get them out of the school system and put them into a lockdown facility and give them the treatment that they need. Whether or not their lawyer permits it is not an issue. I don't want any more children dead. I'm sick of it. And then we have to have a national discussion about the drugs that these kids are being put on. Oh, we'll hear about the kind of weapon tomorrow, and we'll hear about the bullets that we used. But what drugs was he on? Oh, he has privacy on that issue? He should have no privacy. I want to know what medications his doctor put him on. And I want to know what the interaction is between those medications and this kind of violent behavior. It's well documented in the literature if you can still find it. This has been a terrible day on the Savage Nation. Terrible day. A terrible day in America.